Welcome to The Explainer. In the world of global business, there's this constant nagging question. What actually works? How do we get past gut feelings and office politics to find out what's really driving success? Well, today, we're diving into a huge shift in the tools we use to find those answers.
So this is the big question, right? How can a company know for sure that a new training program or a bold new strategy is the real reason for a win and not just a lucky coincidence? Believe me, getting to the bottom of that is way harder than it looks.
And this quote right here, it just nails the problem. See, researchers, like all of us, can get a little too comfortable with their favorite toolkits, the methods they know inside and out. But when you only stick to what's familiar, the most important, trickiest questions in business often get ignored.
All right, so here's our game plan. We'll kick things off with that researcher's dilemma. Then we'll look at two really exciting solutions, one for finding true cause and effect, and another for turning simple words into massive insights. And finally, we'll wrap up by looking at what this new toolkit really means for the future.
You know that old saying, right? If the only tool you have is a hammer, everything starts to look like a nail. Well, for a long time in business research, the hammer has been things like surveys. And look, they're fine for spotting what's happening, seeing a trend, but they can almost never prove why it's happening, and that leaves our biggest questions just hanging there.
So how do we get past just seeing that two things are happening at the same time? We need a better tool, a tool designed to find actual cause and effect. This is all about separating what's just a coincidence from what is a real consequence. It's about finding out what truly drives results.
To prove that A causes B, you actually need three things. First, they have to be connected, obviously. Second, the cause has to happen before the effect. That makes sense. But it's this third one that's the real killer and the most important. You have to rule out every other possible explanation, and that's where the old methods usually just fall apart. This table lays out our options. You can see that most studies are non-experimental, which gives us pretty weak evidence, but the gold standard, the holy grail, is the field experiment. And its secret sauce? It's that one word, random. By randomly putting people into either a test group or a control group, you basically wash away all the other differences between them. That means you can isolate the one thing you're testing and get the strongest proof possible.
Let's make this super concrete. Picture a global company. You're spending a ton of money on training for your employees, your expatriates, before sending them to another country. But how do you know the training is what's making them successful? Or did you just happen to pick your best people to send in the first place? This is the perfect puzzle for a field experiment.
And here's a brilliant solution, the randomized rollout. You can't train everybody at once, right? It's just not practical. So you turn that logistical headache into a scientific superpower. You randomly pick a group to get the training now. The rest, they go on a wait list, and they become your perfect control group. Now the only real difference between the two groups is the training itself, so you can measure its impact with total confidence. So cool!
Okay, so experiments are fantastic for testing one specific thing. But what about understanding those huge fuzzy ideas like a company's strategy or its culture? For that, we need a different kind of tool, one that can unlock the secrets hidden inside the mountains of text data that companies create every single day.
And to see how this works, let's look at a really fascinating case study. Someone analyzed 26 years of Amazon's annual letters to shareholders. I mean, what kind of secrets about a company's journey could be hiding in plain sight in those letters?
Now, this isn't just about reading them over a cup of coffee. It's a rigorous 8-step process. You gather the documents, and then you clean the data, which is a way more important step than it sounds, as you're about to see. After you structure the text into what's called a document term matrix, think of it as a giant map of which words show up where. You can do all sorts of cool things, like measure the overall feeling of the language, or have a computer automatically find the hidden themes.
And this is why that cleaning step is so critical. Look at this. Before cleaning, the most common words are just junk. And, the, to, totally useless. But after you strip out all that noise, the real signal pops right out. The most important words become custom for customer, Amazon, and busy for business. In one step, you go from a meaningless list to the very DNA of the company's strategy.
Now, check this out. This is where it gets really powerful. The analysis found the word COVID was the 21st most important term across all 26 years, even though it only showed up in 3 letters. This shows how text analysis can precisely measure the absolutely massive strategic impact of a single event. It's not just about what's said often, but what's said with weight.
And the analysis didn't just find sudden shocks, it also uncovered these slow, steady shifts. The word employee, for example,
was the 19th most frequent term overall. You could see its importance growing over the decades, signaling a real strategic shift in focus toward the workforce. That's a story you might completely miss just by reading, but the data makes it obvious.
Okay, let's pull these two amazing tools together, because their real magic isn't just what they do on their own, but how they can team up as a combined toolkit to help us tackle some of the biggest questions in business.
Let's take a big business theory, like dynamic capability, which is just a fancy way of asking, how do companies adapt to a changing world? With our new toolkit, we can attack this question from two angles. With a field experiment, we can actually test a strategy for adapting, like seeing if a fail-fast approach works better for new products. And with text analysis, we can observe how a company's public strategy has already adapted over time. One tests, one observes. Together, you get a much, much richer picture.
So, at the end of the day, why does any of this really matter? Well, because better tools don't just give us better answers. They help us ask smarter questions and build a smarter, more evidence-based way of doing business. So here's the bottom line. This new toolkit lets us move from just guessing to actually knowing what causes success. It lets us turn those mountains of text into real, actionable insights. That means we can give business leaders and policymakers advice they can actually trust. And that, in turn, pushes the entire field of business forward.
And that really brings us to the most exciting part, the final thought to leave you with. Now that we can rigorously test ideas in the real world and systematically decode the language of strategy, what hidden forces driving our global economy are we going to uncover next? The toolkit is ready. The best discoveries are definitely still to come. Thanks for joining this explainer.